Okay, perfect. Welcome everyone to this month's PSP Workshop. We are going to be talking about the science behind body-focused repetitive behavior, or BFRBs.
So my name's Srija and I'll be a co-host today. I've been in SN for about 2 years and I work in PSP and editing.
Yep, next slide please, Srija. Yeah, so that's Srija introduced herself. I guess I'll just introduce myself quickly as well. My name is Gurleen. I am the co-lead of the Presynaptic Project, and I've been with SN for about 2 years as well now. I'm really excited to do today's workshop, of course, because it's about a very special and important topic. So today, sorry, go ahead.
So today we're going to be learning about what a BFRB is, how it affects your brain, and how to recognize and help those with a BFRB.
Okay, so as you guys may know from our announcement on Google Classroom, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so basically this month is dedicated to raising awareness and educating people about mental illnesses. The more awareness there is, the less that people feel alone in their mental health journeys. We can all celebrate this month by educating others and by sharing resources. The message we really want you to take away this month is that you're not alone. Everybody has a mental health. Just the way you have a physical health, like sometimes you might get sick or you might have some body aches when you work out too much, if you're exercising a lot. Everyone also has mental health. Sometimes your mental health feels great, you feel active, you feel healthy, but sometimes you're working too hard and you almost feel a little bit down and sore. Figuratively, of course. And so it's important to note that we're all in this together when it comes to mental health. And as long as we are open and honest with ourselves and with the people around us, the big message to remember is that nobody is alone. So we have this infographic here, which gives you kind of a start to identifying some issues in your mental health, because it's really easy to identify when your arm hurts or when you have a scrape on your knee, but it's not so easy to figure out when you may be feeling down and when it's time to get some help. So this infographic on the screen shows 10 common warning signs. If you feel really sad or you have no interest in anything that you really used to love for about 2 weeks, that's a sign to go get help. Additionally, things like wanting to hurt yourself, doing things that are kind of out of control and you wouldn't usually do. If you feel kind of scared and anxious all the time, or if you're not eating very well, if you feel like you're seeing or hearing or believing things that aren't real and people are telling you, oh no, there's nothing there, and you're still like anxious about something like that, that might be a warning sign. Using things like drugs, which of course no one should be using. We should be saying no to drugs at all times. But if you do find that you or somebody in your life that you care about a lot is turning towards drugs, that's a warning sign that maybe they're not feeling as well as they usually do with their mental health. Other things to keep a note of are drastic changes in mood and behavior. If you or someone you know is having a lot of difficulty concentrating or doing their schoolwork, you might find that you can't focus, or you might have a sibling who just doesn't have any interest in doing their schoolwork, especially during the pandemic and online school. It can be really, really hard. And the last warning sign to look for is intense worries or fears that get in the way of daily activities. So if you really liked going on walks every day before and now suddenly you're afraid to leave your house, that's a sign that maybe there's something up with your mental health. And I know all of these things sound a little bit scary and a little bit overwhelming, but some of these things you will have felt before, or people in your lives will have felt before. And when we know the warning signs, we're able to help people and help them get right back to their optimal mental health. This is another infographic we have here, because if you're worried and you want to get help, who do you tell? So you can talk to a family member, a close friend, a teacher, a counselor at your school, or a faith leader if you are religious and you have members of your religious community that you're able to open up to. Those are all people that you can talk to and trust. There's also things for what you can do. So if you see that you or someone you know really needs help, you're also able to talk to a doctor. You can also be honest and clear about what you're feeling and talk to that person. And you can actually find a lot of mental health resources online as well. In terms of what to say, I know it's really difficult sometimes for us to talk about how we feel or about how we think others feel. And so here are some ways that you can kind of start that conversation. So for example, one of the things you could say is that I haven't really felt right lately and I don't know what to do. Can I talk to you about it? That's a great way to start off the conversation. Even if you don't exactly know what's going on, you just kind of feel off. It starts the conversation. And so you have somebody to open up to and maybe better understand yourself. And just a couple of things to keep in mind is sometimes finding mental health resources takes a lot of time. Especially during the pandemic, there's more people struggling than ever. And it can be hard to get help with a doctor or a psychologist right away. And so there's lots of resources online, but you don't have to talk to a doctor or a psychologist right away. Just talking to a friend or a family member is a great first step while you wait to get in touch with somebody who may be more certified in mental health awareness.
So these are some resources if you're in America, but if you're in another country, you can also Google search mental health resources in your said country, and there'll be lots of options for websites, phone numbers, emergency hotlines, but always make sure you're talking to someone first and then get the right kind of help. So now we're going to go into your neuro notebooks and put in what activities you or someone you know can do when you're stressed, nervous, or bored. How do you pass your time? How do you calm yourself? So you can take a minute and write those down. So I hope everyone was able to write something that came to their mind. So now you guys can share what you came up with in the chat and let's discuss.
I guess I can start while we're waiting for some people to put something in the chat. Sometimes when I'm really bored, I like to play with my earrings or some of the jewelry that I have on. Let's see what's in the chat. Oh, some people like to listen to music, journal, listening to music, meditating. That's a really good one. Is there any bad habits anybody has that they wish they could break? In terms of things you do when you're bored, such as like nail biting.
Gurleen, do you have anything that you would like to contribute?
When I was younger, I used to suck my thumb when I was bored. And it took me a really long time to break that habit, but I was able to break it. So not anymore, but I know that was a challenge for me.
That's great that you got over it.
Yeah, it was tough. I actually had to get braces, and the orthodontist put these spikes almost at the back of my teeth so that I couldn't suck my thumb anymore. So I can't say it was all me. I did get some help.
Mhm. But the great thing is that you got help and you went through with it. I
Yeah,
think
that's true.
the
Oh,
most
someone says that they like to pick at their nails, but they stopped doing that and instead started playing with fidgets. So there you go. That's how you took a habit that, that was body focused. So picking at your nails and you started playing with other things like fidgets. That's awesome. Okay, perfect. I think we can move on. Okay, so now we're going to actually talk about what BFRBs are. So it looked like all of you guys had some very healthy habits and coping mechanisms for when you're bored or stressed. But we're going to talk about BFRBs. So BFRBs are body focused repetitive behaviors. So they're anything that people do repeatedly that has to do with their bodies. So if you kind of bite your nails a lot, that's the BFRB. If you pick at your skin, dead skin a lot, that also counts as a BFRB. And hair pulling, if anytime you're in class, you're pulling your hair out, that also counts as a BFRB. I think it's important to note that BFRBs are not mental health disorders. So if you have a bad habit of biting your nails, you don't necessarily have to be worried. It is just a body focused behavior that you do very often. BFRBs can, of course, become dangerous if you're starting to hurt yourself. So if you keep biting your nails, even though it hurts, that's kind of a problem. But if you bite your nails when you're nervous and you don't really do it that often, then it's not really a problem. So that's kind of a gray area between when a BFRB is normal or just a bad habit versus when it's dangerous. And I think it's important to understand that this is kind of the truth with all mental health disorders. It's really hard to tell when somebody is just having a bad day and when it becomes a big problem. And that's kind of gets us into this next slide about, aren't BFRBs just bad habits? And no, they're not the same. Occasionally, everyone will pull at their hair or bite at their nails, but when these habits become excessive, they become clinically significant to healthcare professionals, and that's when they're considered BFRBs. So habits are repetitive tendencies or practices, and they can be pretty mild. So if you bite your nails again, like when you're bored in class, that's not as much of a problem as if you have a complex disorder where you're always biting your nails, even when there's really none left, and it's causing physical damage to your body.
So now we're going to go through an example. So which is the BFRB? Circle your answer in your neuro notebook. Scenario A is Jill picks at her skin when she gets nervous. However, when she sees blood, she stops and goes to get a Band-Aid. Scenario B, Susie pulls at her hair when she gets nervous. She's insecure about her bald spots, but nothing she does stops to work.
So we'll give you guys about a minute to, decide between them and circle whichever one you think it is in your neuro notebook. Okay, if you're ready, let us know in the chat whether you think it's A or B. Which person here is showing a BFRB and not just a bad habit? Okay, I see some B's in the chat. Does anyone want to type up a little explanation as to why they think it's Susie? So Noreen said that Susie has an unhealthy habit because she does not stop no matter what. She has tried many ways, but nothing she does seem to work. Whenever she pulls her hair due to nervousness, she gets the added stress of developing bald spots. Meanwhile, Jill does have a bad habit of picking at her skin, but it's not serious because she knows when to stop. I think Noreen got it perfectly. So we can go on to the next slide. So that is correct. The answer is B. And the reason why is even though they both technically have these bad habits, like if your mom saw you picking at your skin or pulling at your hair, you'd probably be told to stop, either one. But the reason why Susie's is extra dangerous is because Susie doesn't seem to stop. Even though it's making her insecure and it's causing some balding on her head, whereas even though Jill is picking at her skin, when she realizes that she's hurt herself, she stops and she takes action by getting a band-aid. So the behavior is more compulsive when we're talking about Susie, because she doesn't know when to stop, than it is for Jill. So Susie is the right answer. Okay, so now we're going to be talking about labeling parts of the brain that are involved with BFRBs. If you guys look in your neuro notebooks, there actually is a diagram of the brain. You guys feel free to color that in or mark that up. You don't have to do it right now. You could do it after the workshop. It's really up to you. But we're going to talk you through some of the parts of the brain that are involved in BFRBs. We're going to start with the frontal gyrus, the inferior frontal gyrus, which is the part you see in blue. So this part suppresses inappropriate motor functions. So what that means is this part of your brain is what tells you not to pick your nose when you're in class. People who have BFRBs, they tend to have a thinner inferior frontal gyrus, which means they're not able to stop themselves from doing inappropriate behaviors, as well as people with a normal thickness of inferior frontal gyrus are able to. The next part we talk about is the orbitofrontal cortex. Now, this part of the brain is responsible for memory and emotion. In BFRB patients, the brain's reward center is dysfunctional due to a higher level of connectivity between the orbitofrontal cortex and the basal ganglia. I know that was a lot, so I'm going to explain what that means. The basal ganglia is a part of your brain that's responsible for a lot of implicit processing. So things that you can do without really thinking of. If I were to drop you at the end of your street, you'd probably be able to walk back home without having to think too much about which way you're going and what your directions are, because those things are habits. So that's what the basal ganglia does. It basically where your habits form. And the orbitofrontal cortex is responsible for memory and emotion. So things that really drive our reward center is that we do things that get us good results. So for example, you might finish all your homework because the teacher gives you candy when you do that. That's a reward, and it encourages you to do your behavior more often. So for people who are very motivated by that emotion, they have these habits that make them feel good. So for example, picking at your nails might almost be fun to you. It might be rewarding. And that's kind of what we see in the brains of people who have BFRBs. Additionally, the amygdala in BFRB patients doesn't perceive pain as strongly. The amygdala is a part of the brain that is responsible for emotion. So of course, you don't feel pain if you are having a great time. So if you've ever played a game of tag with your friends, and maybe you tripped and you fell down, and yeah, you hurt your knee, there's a little scrape, but you don't really feel it because you're so busy having fun. And then when you go home, you're like, oh yikes, I think I really hurt my knee. It's kind of the same process here. When you're picking at your nails, you're probably, it is a sensitive area. You are going to feel some pain. But because people with BFRBs are more content and they're happy with the reward they get by doing that behavior, they don't really seem to perceive the pain, which makes that behavior a little bit more dangerous. I know this slide had a lot of stuff on it, so just let us know in the chat if you are all good to move on, or if you have any questions you want me to go over on this slide. Just let us know in the chat if you're good. It was clear? Okay, perfect. Thank you guys. We can move on.
So now we're going to do a Kahoot, and I'm going to show you guys the code really quickly. Make sure you use your first name and last initial, and please be respectful to the other players during the Kahoot. And it's going to be a really short Kahoot. We only have 10 questions, and 5 of them will be about the parts of the brain, and then 3 of them will be true or false questions.
I realized that I did the math wrong. It's actually 8 questions, not 10. But again, it is a really short Kahoot. Srija, do you want to load up the Kahoot?
Yes, I'm doing that right now.
Okay, perfect.
Is everyone able to see the Do we have everyone in?
And everyone, is anybody else still waiting? Everyone's free, so we can get started. So the correct answer there was Angela. As you guys saw, Angela's behavior was a lot more complex, and she didn't seem to be able to stop at the appropriate time. Most of you got that one there. It is Karen. As you guys saw, Sarah only kind of presses down on her lip when she's angry, which shows that she's expressing an emotion. But for Karen, it's more of a consistent habit that she does regularly, and she picks at her lips as well, which means that the right answer in this question was Karen. Yep, so Lee was the right answer here. This one was a little bit more complex because for Manveer, I guess when she brushes her hair, some of the hair falls out, which I would say is very normal. That's not something that she's choosing to do. But for Lee, picking at his eyebrow, consistently when he's nervous for a test kind of leads to like losing part of his eyebrow. It might be painful after a certain point, especially because there's so much emotion behind it because he's anxious. So the right answer here was Lee. Okay, so this one was a little bit tricky because both of them had bad habits, but BFRBs are body focused. So procrastinating is not a great thing, but it's also not related to your body, whereas picking your nose, of course, is. So that's why the correct answer here was John. Most of you guys got that one as well. If you notice, these questions, they tend to vary. So in the first question, the person who had the BFRB was the one who didn't know when to stop or that caused themselves the most pain. In the last question, it was the one who actually had a body-focused behavior. So remember the question we just did. What sets this question a little bit different from the rest is the fact that the timing of the behaviors is also very important. So for Ty, he only scratches when he's itchy, which is pretty normal. But Jamal, sitting in one class, continues to scratch his arm repeatedly, which is not, which is kind of more of a warning sign, which is why Jamal is the right answer here. Okay, so that was really quick. This is true. All behavior focused, repetitive, or sorry, this is false, is what I meant to say. All behavior focused, all body focused repetitive behaviors are mental health disorders. That's not true. In fact, a lot of them are just bad habits. Anything that you do repeatedly to your body is a BFRB. It becomes a mental health disorder and increasingly important when you're causing harm to yourself or when it's happening very often and you don't know when to stop. So you guys were spot on with this one. As you guys can see, this is actually a true statistic. So as many as 1 in 20 people actually have a BFRB. And that might come as a shock because you probably have never heard about a BFRBs before this workshop. And learning that it's so common actually goes to show that there's actually a lack of awareness about them. Score. Wow, awesome, guys. As you can see, this is true. Many BFRBs are dismissed as bad habits, and sometimes they just are bad habits. But other times they're a lot more complex, and people don't really seem to understand why that behavior is so dangerous because they're never really taken seriously. And it's just like, oh, this person has a bad habit of picking at their nails or something. Congratulations to our winners. Thank you guys so much for participating in this Kahoot. Okay, so now we've learned a lot about BFRBs today. The question now is, how can I help myself or others that have recognized some of the warning signs of BFRBs? So of course, there is actually a portion of your neuro notebook that goes along with this slide. So if you guys just want to take a minute to open up your neuro notebooks, I believe this is the very last page, and let's fill out that table about how we're able to recognize the signs of BFRBs and then how we can help others and ourselves. So let's start with recognizing the warning signs. So some signs, obviously BFRBs are different for every person. And so they can have a bunch of different types of consequences. So something like short bitten nails or multiple wounds on one area of your skin. If you guys remember that example with Jamal constantly scratching at one area, that's what would produce something like this. And the other thing is bald patches. So if you notice these type of signs on your body or on somebody else's body, it's also important to know where they come from. Like, for example, someone may just have cut their nails really short by accident. You need to also know what is this behavior that kind of led to that. So if you see your friend is always biting their nails and then you look at their nail beds and they're really irritated and they're maybe swollen, a little bit bloody, that's a warning sign where you really have to use your judgment when it comes to things like this. But then once you've identified the problem, the next question is, how can you help other people? The first thing you can do is listen and empathize. So if your friend has really short bitten nails, maybe ask them if they're nervous about something. They might tell you that they have a lot of stress, they have a lot of schoolwork and they're falling behind. Just listen to them and, show them that you care. The next step is to guide them to professionals or loved ones that can help. So again, if we're sticking on the same example with your friend, maybe take them to a teacher or take them to a guidance counselor who may be able to help them figure out their schedule, reduce their workload, and find ways to help them cope with all that stress that doesn't involve biting their nails. And the other big thing you guys can do is raise awareness. I had never heard of BFRBs before we actually started working on this workshop. And that goes to show that even though they're so common, a lot of people don't know what they are, which is why you guys can share what you've learned, especially with people that you think may have a BFRB. So again, that friend that we're talking about in this example, let the friend know, hey, I was at a workshop last month and we talked about BFRBs and I learned a little bit about what we can do to help. And I think I should maybe tell you too, because it might be able to help you in your life. So awareness and education is so, so important. The other kind of category here is, what if the person who needs help is you? How do you help yourself? Number one thing you can do is know that you're not alone. There's almost 1 in 20 people that are going through the exact same thing. You can seek advice from a healthcare professional. So talk to your doctor, talk to a guidance counselor at school or a teacher and see if they can help you get in touch with the doctor or get in touch with somebody who'd be able to help you. It's also always good to ask for support from a loved one, because oftentimes these body focused repetitive behaviors, they come from an external source or an underlying source of stress or some type of anxiety. So for example, if you find that you scratch your arm a lot because you're really anxious at school because you feel like you don't fit in, well, talking to your teacher, talking to your parents may help you find ways to, feel more comfortable at school and feel more comfortable with yourself. And that in turn can actually help you when getting, when getting treated for a BFRB.
So in conclusion, now that you know that people with BFRBs don't just suffer from bad habits or tics, BFRBs are actual disorders that force your brain into thinking that repeatedly fidgeting with your body will relieve stress, anxiety, and boredom, as well as how to help those who struggle.
Okay, so on to May's virtual challenge. So this month, your activity is to create your own daily habit tracker. So you are going to list a bunch of habits. They don't have to be body focused at all. They can be things like going for a walk, reading an article, exercising for 30 minutes, drinking water, whatever it may be. It can be a good habit or a bad habit. And so you guys all have your own copy posted on the Google Classroom. You are going to come up with some habits and track them over the course of the week. So for example, I have a goal to exercise 30 minutes every day. And I'm going to be very honest with myself and I'm going to track how many days I do that habit. And then once you complete, tracking your habits for a week, there's a couple of questions you have to answer. Just reflection on some good habits, some bad habits, how you can actually change some of your habits and what you learned in the past week. And anyone who completes this activity by April 29th will be entered in a draw to win. So I really, really encourage you guys to do this activity because obviously it doesn't require much work. You just have to reflect on yourself. Oh, did I say April? I'm so sorry. I meant May. Yes, so it's due May 29th, so the end of this month, not last month. Unfortunately, we can't go back in time. But I really encourage you to do this activity. because it'll help you be more aware of yourself, and it's a great way to incorporate self-care into your day, because I know with the pandemic and everything going on in our lives, it can be really, really stressful and really hard to take care of ourselves sometimes. So if you want to spend 30 minutes with your pet or with your siblings or with your parents every day, that's a great way for you to de-stress and a good habit for you to make in the future. So that's why this activity is posted on the Google Classroom, and we really encourage you to give it a chance.
So we hope you guys enjoyed the workshop, and thank you guys for joining us today. If you guys have any questions, you can email us at the emails listed on the slide.
Thank you all so much for coming to today's workshop. I know the topic was quite heavy, and it was something that maybe was a little bit more serious than what you're used to, but I'm really, really proud of you for participating in this workshop and being so open. Remember to take care of yourselves and your mental health, and of course, be aware and support those around you. If you guys have any questions, feel free to stay back. Otherwise, the workshop is now over. Have an amazing day, night, evening, afternoon, wherever you're from. Bye, everyone.